So with that, I want to open it up for questions. So if any of you have a question, can you raise your hand and let me know who you want, who you're directing it to, and I'll bring the microphone around. So I'll let you guys do that. So.
No questions?
Thank you, Gene. Question for both of you. You both mentioned that comments from your constituents are of the utmost importance. How can we as individuals leverage ourselves beyond our local district?
Well, I'll say beyond the local district is pretty much showing up in Olympia or attending a Zoom meeting, either calling in. It's always better if you're there in person because that way your body language is recognized and you can be passionate about things. But just like as I mentioned before, be passionate but have a story that actually has some compassion too if you want to persuade the other side. Because otherwise they just throw up their, when we talk, they don't really care what we have to say. So, and that's one thing I have to learn. This is my first year, this is 2025, is that my message on the floor has to be more shaped for the cameras because they're not going to pay any attention to what I have to say on the floor. But we do fight. I'll pass this on to you. We do fight. This last session, on a normal long session, there's like 400 or so amendments. There's so many bills. There's that. We set a new record in the House. We did 888 amendments. They're trying to slow things down, make things more accurate, and expose exactly how to touch. Yeah.
So the amendment, the stacking it up of amendments is a leverage that we can use to try to get them to not bring the bill to a floor for a vote. So it could be in Rules Committee, sitting there, ready to come to the floor for a vote. It could even be on the floor calendar, but not on the order of consideration. And we just load that sucker up with as many amendments as we can, and then they're not going to. They as it gets towards the end, they're going to waive this thing because they want to get their bills voted on and all that stuff. And when we start dragging our feet, of course, we're going to give up our bills too because we're going to wind up losing those if we stretch it out. But that's a tactic that we can use. Stack that sucker with a bunch of bills so that they'll skip that one and go to some other thing. So, but what can you do? So, do you know anybody in King County? Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, the very first person that determines whether or not a bill gets heard is the chairman of the committee. So if you know the chairman of the committee and you know somebody in that chairman of the committee's district, and that person calls the chairman and says, I strongly oppose this bill, okay, that helps because now that chairman is getting feedback from their own district. Okay, but if you're in Puyallup and the sponsor is in Seattle, not going to pay any attention to. But if you know somebody in Seattle and you say, hey, we're of like mind, can you call and support or oppose this particular bill? We want you to give this bill a hearing. We don't want you to give this bill a hearing. We oppose it. Building up that network. So if there's 100 people here and everybody has 4 or 5 friends that they know in other districts, that's what it takes. So you want to make sure that your first person you respond to, the first person making the decision is the chairman of the committee. After the chairman of the committee gives a hearing, then all the committee members have to vote. So now you want to focus on people. You want to know what district all those committee members are in and get those people mobilized to correspond with their representatives on the committee to support or oppose the bill. You want to put them in an uncomfortable situation. And the way to do that is to hear from their constituents. And then after that, then it's going to go to the floor. So then you go wider. So chairman, committee, and then the full Senate.
Senator Phil, I'd like to thank you. We are part of your district, and every letter that we've written to you over the years, you have always responded with not a form letter, but a personal response. That's why why we tell our friends, vote for Senator Will.
Well, just so you know, if you send me a personal email, I will respond with a personal email. Somebody called up and said, you responded with a boilerplate email. I said, you sent me a boilerplate email. So, no.
Hi, my name is George Kelly. I don't know whose district I'm in right now.
You're in Maury, Levitt, and Bronski, and Keaton.
Thank you.
Actually, you're in mine.
Okay.
Just barely.
So, when they say tax the rich, I say that could be a sucker punch by going after their donor class. Think about that. I think that'd be great. Turn it into a counter punch, sucker punch. Go after their donor class. All these billionaires that dumped all that money into 1639. Remember that? When they say tax the rich, yeah, set them up for a sucker punch, right in the solar plexus, right where it's take their money.
Yeah, the problem with that is. So I made the statement when they passed this capital gains tax, which they did in Connecticut, for example. The first year they passed the capital gains tax, they got a windfall. So they said, next year we're going to get even more money. Okay? And the following year, it took a nosedive. So every year for the last, 10 years or so, I'm actually having them plotted on to a graph. Every year, we've always gotten pretty close to the projected revenue stream, okay? Until they pass the capital gains tax. Then all of a sudden, we have this crisis. We have this loss of revenue. So Jeff Bezos moved. Now, I said $800 million in lost revenue. I was corrected. It's $1 billion. So Jeff Bezos moves, and it costs the state loses $1 billion in revenue. So where are they going to get that money? That's why all your little fees and all this little stuff and all the tolls, driving over here, you're driving a toll road now. And I actually did an op-ed on the toll roads, and I likened it to the opioid addiction. I said, they did a 21-month study on tolls, and it was supposed to do three things. It was supposed to increase the speed by 45 miles an hour. It was supposed to pay for itself, and it was supposed to do one other thing I can't remember. It only did one thing of those three, which was pay for itself. So when you get a toll, 35% of that money goes to pay the cost of collecting the toll. So they're flushing 35% of the money down the toilet. And now they're bonding against that toll revenue, which I want you to think about this. If you bond against the toll revenue, you're saying you can never increase capacity of that roadway, because if you do, the toll revenue would go down, right? Which you can't do because now you're bonded against it, right? So I said, first they did this study, and they got a taste of that money, right? And they voted to put the tolls in place. But then they needed another fix. So then they made the tolls bigger. But that still wasn't enough. They needed another fix. So then they bonded against the toll revenue, right? And so, it's the same thing. It's like the opioid addiction. They're addicted to this stuff. So. But all that money that when Jeff Bezos moves, you are now in the rich category. I don't know if you recall when Al Gore said, what's a millionaire? He said, well, eventually everybody's going to be making $1 million in their lifetime. So you're all millionaires.
This question has to do with preemption in the 2023-2024 biennium. There was a thing called preemption, change of state's preemption law. And I've been trying to run it down to see if that's going to be reconsidered this year. Have you got any information on that?
So there has been talk of repealing state preemption law, 941-290. State preemption law, for those of you who don't know, is very, very important because as much as you may hate what they do to your gun rights in Olympia, just wait till you let local jurisdictions take it from there. King County residents think about what you would be subject to. That has never really come to fruition. There's never actually, I don't think there's been a bill introduced.
Yeah, I thought there was a bill.
There may have been a bill introduced at one point. It didn't go anywhere. It is something that I keep my eye on every year. I do videos on it routinely. We have seen erosion of state preemption laws in other states, and then in California, for example, we have lawsuits consistently against municipalities because they're passing their own gun laws. Illinois does the same thing. So 941-290 state preemption law. Pay careful attention. Make sure there's not a bill to repeal it. If it is, you got to fight like hell on that one.
Right. Which means if you drive from Puyallup to Kent, Kent to Auburn,
right.
you could be legal here, and you could be a felon in the middle, and then you could be legal at the other end.
I go to Pullman 15 times a year, and I mean, just think about the tapestry of gun laws you would go through as you go from King County, Washington to Whitman County, Washington. So
the Democrats, for years to avoid that preemption, have been trying to put the gun bills under the public health department. And so if you follow the public health department, you will see gun bills and gun studies in there. They're slowly trying to move it there, because then what will happen? They can pass, just like during COVID, they can pass restrictions without the legislature. So just be aware that also is going on. There have been a couple of bills that have passed. Seattle and Tacoma passed a gun and ammo tax bill. Seattle implemented it and lost all the gun businesses. Tacoma implemented it, even though we had 3 rooms of overflow people. And the mayor did not know that Aero Precision, a $90 million corporation with 1,000 employees, was just down the street from City Hall. And they moved to Lakewood. So they never implemented it, but those were just a couple examples that they didn't do the preemption. And you have one more question?
This one doesn't really deal with gun laws, but there's a bill to modernize the selection of our sheriffs and marshals and so on. And we just had the Pierce County Sheriff in here a couple of workshops ago. And for those at Pierce County, I think you would like the guy if you're a Republican and a gun owner. But this bill that I work with the Black Diamond Gun Club. We got about 1,100 members. We're trying to advocate for our members to get involved in opposing all these bills. And so I've got an initiative there to involve our gun club members, that we got apathy just like everybody else has got apathy at their clubs. There's approximately 750,000 concealed carry permit holders in the state of Washington.
Half of which, by the way, are women.
And we got about, on the bill that you cited, 1163, we got a few thousand. I calculated that out to be about 2%. There's about 75 gun clubs in the state of Washington. I inventoried them one day. And there's a lot of gun club members in this state. And when you can only roust out about 16 or 17,000 people to oppose a bill, especially one that requires you to take training to renew your concealed carry permit license, it doesn't make sense. Because you got 750,000 of these. The other thing is the math doesn't add up. There isn't enough people to certify that many people in that short a time once this bill takes effect in May of next year. So, but anyway, this bill is 5974. It's a Senate bill, and it has to deal with modernizing the selection of your sheriffs, marshals, and so on. So you ought to take a look at that one in addition to these gun bills.
Is Valdez the sponsor in that bill? Valdez, you know?
Lubbock and
Love it.
Yeah, look, real quick. That's Senate Bill 5974. Right. And there is an event, which I'm supposed to be at tomorrow night, at the Experience Church here in Puyallup. And General Michael Flynn's there. And there's a couple of other sheriffs. There'll be several sheriffs there. And this is a bill that it's